Guys, it's Mitchell. Today we are going to do like a Friday podcast thing. I'm going to go ahead and kind of just recap some of the news, some of the interesting stuff we've had going on this week, and just put this out for you guys both on SoundCloud and on YouTube. And the first one, I tweeted about this, and if you guys aren't following me on Twitter, you should. And that is that this was posted on XDA, and I'll have a link to like the resources for this on my website, and I'll have a couple of them in the YouTube description. But Pixel users are able to access kind of like a secret high brightness mode on their Pixel devices. And this enables the Pixel 4 to reach a max brightness of 610 nits over the 450 nits that it does from the factory. And when I read this, I tweeted about this, and the reaction I got from people was like kind of interesting. Someone was asking me to explain this to them. And that's that iPhone users on their 1000 nit display devices are reading about how Pixel users are excited about their secret high brightness mode. And my commentary on this is that users, your priorities are fucked up. Excuse the language, but what did I mean by that? Why was I bringing this up specifically in the context of the Pixel 4? Well, the Pixel 4, okay, has prioritized a high refresh rate and certain features, right, over outdoor sunlight legibility and over battery life. Whereas Apple, on the other hand, their new iPhones are getting incredible battery life. They reach a max peak brightness of over 1000 nits. And for the majority of people in their everyday use cases, the ability to easily read their phone outside and not having the high refresh rate is a bigger priority, or it leads to a better user experience. And as long as Android manufacturers and Android OEMs are going to chase after like bookmarking features just to kind of bookmark that we have this feature, we're going to continue to get these devices that just give us an incomplete user experience. So priorities are fucked up. That was my commentary on it. The next one was that I got to have some decent hands-on time with a Realme X2 Pro or a Realme Pro X, whatever the Realme device is, with a Snapdragon 855 Plus, high refresh rate, 64 megapixel camera. It's a device of a friend of mine who's here visiting in Hanoi. I might do a video hands-on with it. If you guys want something more out of this, I'll see if I can get like 10 minutes with the device to like just go throughout the usage of it and how I feel about it. But after using a 90 hertz display, this is the first time I've gotten to use it, and after talking with my friend about his experience, because he did have a Pocophone F1 with the Pixel Experience ROM on it before. He is a moderate tech enthusiast. He said the screen looks good, but when I used it, coming from my Redmi K20 Pro with a normal 60 hertz refresh display, and using the X Pro 2, a couple of things came to mind. And that was that although these animations are refreshing faster and everything seems to move more seamless, which is really nice, it doesn't make up for crappy animations and just kind of an incomplete user experience. And what do I mean by that? Color OS, which he was running on his phone, the animations, to me, didn't seem cohesive. The animations didn't seem like they were necessarily smooth. Scrolling was like quick, but like if I'm scrolling through an app such as Instagram, how much do I really care if the screen refreshes that quickly? Like, to me, it seemed like it was one of these features that I would really, really enjoy if everything else about the device was already checked, including graphical user interface and making that graphical user interface enjoyable to use, which I did not get with my hands-on time with the device. The other thing I want to bring up is that there's a certain amount of motion blur in content that is purposeful. Like having a certain amount of motion blur instead of it being at a higher refresh rate from someone that creates video, having that higher refresh rate makes things look less, not necessarily less fluid, but the motion blur isn't something that in my usage like detracts from the experience of using the device. Right? Because you're scrolling through stuff, it looks blurry. Like I don't perceive that my eyes need to have a clear image of what I'm scrolling past on my page, especially at the cost of battery life. Now, that's not something that, what I'm not saying is that I don't want higher, screen pulling, meaning I'm fine with a 60 hertz display. But if the screen digitizer can refresh at a higher rate so that my touch input is read faster, that is something to me that I would prioritize more, because then my inputs are registered faster, like minute movements are registered faster, and that's something that immediately affects the feedback I have when using a device as an end user, whereas the refresh rate, it's a luxury. It's not bad, but I'm not sacrificing battery life at the cost of a refresh rate. That was just my feelings on it. I didn't necessarily, it didn't strike me as something that was like, oh, this is an amazing feature. It was like, oh, this is cool. It looks different. It definitely looks less cinematic. Like the best way for me to describe it, where's my cell phone? If I'm using my cell phone, it feels very fluid, like I'm watching a movie. And then the moment I was using that device, it felt like way more like I was filming at 60 frames a second and watching it back at 60 frames a second. Not necessarily something that was immediately like oh, I must have this. The next thing that I want to talk about is the Motorola Razr announcement and release. And like this is something that, like, this isn't my beef with MKBHD. This isn't my beef with like John Rettinger. This isn't my beef with any specific YouTuber. But like the general consensus that I heard from the tech community on this device was like, oh, this is a really cool device, not because the usability is any better, but because it's like a nostalgia thing. Which, like, to me is almost kind of like, this is a new cell phone that's $1,400. Why are we looking at this like a retro piece of tech, like a Nintendo 64, right? Like, how many people would be buying Nintendo 64s if they were like triple the price of like an average gaming system? Like if a Xbox 360 or PlayStation is like $400 or $450, like would you spend like $1,800, $1,600 on a Nintendo 64? Like, especially if they were making modern Nintendo 64s, I don't know. Like, plus a 2,500 milliamp hour battery is just kind of really unimpressive. I do see it being a device that, like, for maybe the older generation would be cool, but at the same time, is the older generation gonna want a $1,400 phone? I'm just not sure what the device is marketed at. If the device had like a 3,500 milliamp hour battery plus a Snapdragon 712, then I could see it having more value. I just, like, having middling battery life and a super small form factor, I just don't hear that many people asking for smaller phones. And hearing YouTubers talk about this brand new $1,400 phone as like a nostalgia thing is like kind of detached from what the average viewer would be willing to spend on the device. Just my personal beef. We've got two things about the Redmi Note 8 Pro. First one is that we have Gcam out now for the Redmi Note 8 Pro. I'm not sure how good it is. I don't have a Redmi Note 8 Pro, Would you guys like me to get a Redmi Note 8 Pro to test, do a long-term usage case with? Let me know. That was the first one. I'll have links to where you can down Gcam on my website. Next one, rumors of a Redmi Note 8 Pro with a Snapdragon 730G. Now this to me is confusing. I'm not sure what they're going to be pricing the Redmi Note 8 Pro at, but if they price it as the same price of a Redmi K20, then the difference between the Redmi K20 and the Note 8 Pro is a 48 megapixel sensor versus a 64 megapixel sensor on the camera, LCD versus OLED, 730 versus 730G, in-display fingerprint scanner versus rear-mounted, which is kind of a toss-up. Like I don't see the purpose of necessarily releasing a Redmi Note 8 Pro with a Snapdragon processor, especially if you're going to be pricing it at a device that you already have in the market. The Redmi Note 8 Pro is already kind of like an international device. The Mi 9T is already an international device. Are they going to be releasing the Redmi Note 8 Pro as the international Redmi flagship in the countries that the Redmi K20 isn't being sold in? It's just really a confusing play for me. Wouldn't be the first time Xiaomi's done it, but this would be really confusing. The next one is to talk about the Xiaomi Mi Note 10. By the way, I've got some deals on the Mi Note 10 right now. You can get it for like $500, which is close to MSRP on GearBest, and I'll have links for that on my website along with the coupon code. I think you can get those deals still. Is the Mi Note 10 overpriced? AKA the Xiaomi Mi CC9. Right now, I have to say it kind of is overpriced for a couple of reasons. The first reason is that the Mi Note 10 is going to have the camera system that the Redmi K30 has. Like the Redmi K30 will probably get the same camera system, but with a better SoC, and it'll probably be priced right around the same price as the Mi Note 10. But it's not going to be getting released internationally. The Redmi K30 will probably be an India, China exclusive. I think that the Mi Note 10, or at least the Mi CC9, it needs to come in, for me, it needs to come in at a price between $350 to $425. Because that, I think, is a sweet spot, especially for people that don't need the flagship SoC, but would prefer the flagship camera. To me, that seems like it's a slightly better play price-wise. Moving up into that $450 range, you're really getting a little bit too close to the Redmi K20 Pro, the Xiaomi Mi 9T Pro, as well as the Realme X2 Pro and the OnePlus 7T. I think that pricing it that high is really overpriced, specifically because of the software development for the camera. Because I could see software development taking the Mi Note 10 camera, that 108 megapixel camera, I could see software really taking it to the next level. I just know Xiaomi, and I doubt that Xiaomi is going to put that kind of effort into developing the software experience on the camera, because it's not a flagship device and because Xiaomi doesn't really have the incentive to do so. And I think that's a conversation that I should have with some users, and it's a bigger conversation to have. If you guys want to talk to me about this, go ahead and @ me on Twitter. Check out Xiaomitography, and check this out on SoundCloud and wherever you listen to podcasts. Till then, it's been Mitchell. Peace.